morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, honourable guests and esteemed panellists to come. So 24 hours ago, I was studying e-mobility and I reached a fever pitch of excitement. I found out that in 20 years' time, half the cars in Europe will be electric vehicles, despite 1.5% of them today being internal combustion engines. I found out the price of batteries have dropped by 90%. However, this morning, when I was stuck in a 2.5-hour traffic jam in New Delhi, it didn't seem that the revolution was in any way imminent. But that's the thing about revolutions, they can sort of happen under your nose without you knowing it, as we found out recently. Then I called my mother, who's bought an electric car, and she's so scared of driving her electric car because she worries she'll run out of range and recharge. So this incredibly expensive Toyota electric car is currently stuck in her garage in Oxford. Help us navigate these exciting but choppy waters of e-mobility are our fantastic panellists. Let me welcome our panellists in. First of all, we welcome Mahua, who's the MD and CEO of Convergence Energy Services, a government-backed institution of India that's enabling e-mobility around the country. Welcome to Mahua.
Thank you, Jasper. Thank you so much for having me at this event.
We're delighted to have you, and we'll bring you all in a second. Secondly, welcome Caspar Rawles. Now, Caspar is particularly interesting in this session because Caspar, as the Chief Data Officer of Benchmark Mineral Services, knows everything there is to know about the components and the chemistry of batteries. Welcome to Caspar.
Thank you, Jasper.
And finally, a veteran and icon of climate change and the environment, Sven Svedal, Director of Klima 2020, joining us live from Norway. Welcome to you, Sven.
Thank you very much for having me.
We're delighted to have all of you, and we're delighted to have the guests here. This is the sort of graveyard shift, as they call it, so I'll wander around and hopefully make this a little higher energy. Question to everybody in the audience. Who understands the workings of an internal combustion engine? No? No one? Who understands the workings of a battery-operated electrical vehicle or EV? Right. Well, good news is on hand, and we're going to start this debate with Caspar, who knows everything there is to know about the chemistry of batteries. So before we get going and we wander through this debate with your help and with the panelists' help, we're going to ask Caspar Rawles to explain to us the basics of what powers the powertrain of an EV. We know that half of the cost of an EV is a battery, and so Caspar's going to unpack the chemistry and the engineering of the battery. Over to you, Caspar.
Thank you, Jasper. Just to say thanks to you and the WION team for inviting Benchmark to take part in this event. So when we're talking about lithium-ion batteries, I think you can think of, I think most people have heard of lithium-ion batteries and think of that as the platform technology that will enable all of this. But actually, within lithium-ion itself, there's a number of different battery chemistries or flavors, recipes, however you want to look at it. And most of that variation is within the cathode. So there's two parts. There's the anode and the cathode within the lithium-ion battery, and the cathode is where you see the biggest variation. Now, when we're talking about mobility, there's two main chemistries really that we need to focus on. One of those is called LFP, or lithium iron phosphate. That is that contains the cathode contains lithium and iron phosphate, funnily enough. And that is kind of a cheaper in terms of cost of raw materials battery. And it's a very good, stable technology. It's been around for a long time, but it's slightly less energy dense than the other chemistry I'm about to talk about, which means that for the same volume of pack, you drive a slightly shorter range. Now, there's ways around that. It is a popular chemistry, but that's one. And the other one that we need to focus on is like a nickel-based chemistry, and these are called NCM, nickel, cobalt, manganese, or NCA, nickel, cobalt, aluminium. And that's what they're made up of. And those chemistries are more energy dense, so you can drive a larger range for the same volume of cell. Volume is what is important in an EV, and weight. And within that NCM category as well, you have kind of low nickel, high nickel, and mid nickel. And the higher the nickel that is, generally speaking, the more range you can drive, the more energy dense the battery is the term that we use. So they're the kind of main chemistries in mobility. Outside of that, there's some other chemistries that you use. For example, on your smartphone, you have something called LCO, which is lithium cobalt oxide. and that is very rich in cobalt and serves the needs of like a smartphone or a laptop very well.
Caspar, that's fantastic. I hope we've all got that. There'll be a test at the end to make sure that that's all covered. Of course, most people in this room will know that post-Ukraine, the price of nickel has gone up by 100%. You may also know that 75% of the world's cobalt supply sits in one country, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Yeah? We'll come on in a second to the sourcing of these materials, but clearly, and in the current age, energy security is very important. Let's pan the camera out, if we can, a little bit, Mahua. You have an awesome responsibility to enable the infrastructure and power up EVs across India. This is a question for you, Mahua, and then on to Sven. Where do you stand today in terms of where we're at in the development of the EV cycle? Are we halfway? Are we all the way? Are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic? Just give us a kind of view from the bridge, if you could.
Sure, thank you. Firstly, thank you, Jasper, for having me at this event and the WION team. Where are we on the EV cycle? If there were a hockey stick kind of situation, I would say this is where we are right now. There's a number of things going on. There are discussions going on supply, on financing, on manufacture, on what do we do with the batteries once they're done with their life in the transport business. How do we dispose these batteries? And then there's, of course, discussions going on pollution. To what extent can we incentivize more electric vehicles on the road? And then, of course, the big discussion is around, or a discussion that keeps going on, is to do with charging stations. Do we have enough of them? And when will we have enough of them? And once we do have enough of them, have we got it right on the technology? That's changing very fast. And then the big discussions that are not going on in public, but I know they are causing a lot of concern to manufacturers, is where does the supply come from? And so a lot of upheaval and possible volatility in prices, as you just said as well, thanks to the situation in Ukraine, we've got a lot of volatility in the market. So there's a lot going on in India. The federal government or the central government is doing a significant amount of work in pushing electric vehicles, putting that through front-ended subsidies, complemented by state governments. As I speak, there are about 16 or 17 states with EV policies in place, and about 5 or 6 more that are still drafting theirs. So it's a very aggressive period for electric vehicles. And I'm seeing more and more the beginnings of a discussion around passenger vehicles, meaning customer vehicles like the ones you're saying that your mum has in her garage. We will have to address those daily concerns. And for that, we don't have that much choice right now in the market. So the market's it differs significantly between two-wheelers, three-wheelers, four-wheelers, and buses. So there's a lot going on.
Okay, Mahua, so tremendous challenges, work in progress.